Hello and welcome to Gardening Australia. It's time to step up and get set because we've got the inspiration and know-how you need to knock it out of the gardening park this week. Here's what's coming up.
I meet a seed scientist who specialises in collecting rare and threatened species from our native rainforests.
Defying gravity and hanging mid-air can be tough on plants, but I've got some tips to take your garden to the next level.
Today, I'm making a simple pond that we could all have a go at in a small space. Yeah, just let them go anywhere. That's it. And we meet a horticulturist looking to pump up the colour.
I refer to it as being a maximalist, where we're about as many plants as possible across the seasons.
Our public gardens bring so much joy, particularly to those of us living in the city. But they don't just happen by chance. There's so much that goes into designing and planting out these centrepieces. Jerry's bedding in with a hort team in Brisbane to uncover the story of a new garden that's already making an impact on visitors.
I'm at Roma Street Parkland, one of the jewels in the glittering crown of Brisbane's public gardens. Every year, thousands of locals and tourists flock here to take in the sunshine, colour and horticultural delights. While we've filmed here often over the years, today I'm checking out a new addition to these gardens and finding out how a tricky, unpromising site has been converted into a feature using some unusual plant choices and gardening know-how. Paul Hoffman has been managing Brisbane's city parklands for 22 years, and over that time he's seen his share of wins and losses in the landscape.
Things change and evolve, and our garden at Roma Street Parkland is always changing and evolving. So it was an ideal opportunity with some hard landscape works we were doing in the waterway to actually reimagine this space and put it back to the original design intent of the park, which was a rockery succulent garden.
Oh, so succulents were part of the original plan?
They were. There was a few scattered through the garden, but with our horticultural team, we've just taken that to the next level and created our entirely new succulent garden in this space.
You actually turned the uncompromising site to an advantage.
We did. You know, gardening and landscaping is about the challenges of the site. So with this site, with the waterway and with the restricted access, we were able to use that in our design to keep the public away, because succulents are a bit spiky, and to also create that microclimate with the wall. This is a really hot part of the garden, and the key was getting the drainage right.
How did you go about doing the basic landscaping work?
So part of that was we created our own soil mix on site, so using a bit of our royal show, our Eka manure with a lot of sand, and then that was put into real terraces or podiums. So using the larger rocks to create those terraces helped with really good free draining soil.
Heavy earthworks were required before any planting could take place, with the use of a mini excavator to shift rockwork and a conveyor belt to shoot soil into place. You've got stonework here. This footpath is particularly pleasing to the eye.
So that's tumbled sandstone. It's a larger, rounder stone. It's decorative and it's got a really nice design element to it, but it's also key in the drainage. So it's a drainage corridor so the water can feed into it and get channeled away from the plants and not have them sitting in water when a big downpour occurs.
And you've used a similar material for the mulch?
We have. That's a smaller tumbled sandstone. It heats up. It helps the plants show off their colour because it's quite a neutral base, but also that idea of keeping the plants a little bit drier and keeping them warm.
Did you find them all in one place, or...?
No, it was definitely a challenge for our horticultural team to go and find all the different varieties and get that textural difference across the garden.
Right, so if you're trying to do this at home, you're going to have to do a little bit of research.
A little bit of research and a little bit of hunting down those particular varieties that you're after.
Now, Brisbane isn't the ideal place for growing succulents. It has heavy rainfall and there's high humidity almost all year round. But this has the perfect microclimate, And with the excellent drainage that's been provided, even the fussiest succulents are now thriving. Now, that's a standout pachypodium you've got there. You don't see many that size.
You don't. I'll introduce you to Fang. So Fang is a 40-year-old pachypodium grown from seed, and it was a lady that's unwell, and she donated it to the parkland so that we are now the custodians of Fang herb pachypodium.
Oh, it's got centre stage, hasn't it?
It has. Pride of place in our garden.
Now, just over there, I can see a Cussonia from South Africa. I've only ever seen that once in Melbourne Botanic Gardens and Sydney Botanic Gardens, but never here. Where did you get it from?
Well, Tim, one of our horticulturists, he actually saw the one in the Melbourne Botanical Gardens and searched Australia-wide to try and find our very own mountain cabbage tree. So now we've got one here, pride of place in our succulent garden.
Fantastic. Well done. It's a great plant.
We'll see how it grows and evolves, and hopefully it starts to really take shape in that part of the garden.
While we're here, I must say, I'm really smitten by these mangaves because I've never seen so many in one garden before. Are these new on the horticultural scene?
They are. They're fairly new on the scene, and what I really love about these is the sculptural form of them, but also the textural contrast and the difference with the spots, and then that bronze maroon colour is really striking and adds that textural difference.
And I think that's it. The textural difference is here. When you're looking from the other side, it's like looking at a coral reef.
It is. If you were snorkeling or scuba diving, this could be a coral reef.
Those euphorbias, they've grown so fast.
They have. They're just in the right spot. They get the warmth from the wall, they get really good drainage, and they've really shot up in the last 12 months.
Is that the variety Cowboy?
It is Cowboy, and you can tell by the ears off to the side that you see in a Wild West movie.
Fabulous plant. Despite the appearance, it's not a cactus. It is a succulent. And here, they've cannily used it to screen the rear wall, obscuring the boundary of the garden to make it feel larger. It's not every day you see succulents used as a hedging plant. I'm really pleased to see that you've found a place for blue chalk sticks. That's one of my old favourites. It's such a cool thing to see in summer.
It is, and en masse, it actually really creates that real ground cover look that when you have a large garden, you can play with ground cover, and in the succulent world as well.
And that's sedum.
Sedum. So the sedum gold is also another really vibrant yellow that really gives that contrast of texture and colour against the blue chalk sticks.
The garden's now been established for 18 months, and it's been a rousing success, with visitors now actively seeking it out and taking photos.
The public have really embraced the garden as they walk through. It's something new to Roma Street, but also there's some old favourites in here that they love and they know from their childhood days, and there's some new exciting varieties that are coming through, or just them en masse. A lot of people see one or two little succulents when they go to the nursery, but when you put them en masse, you really get this display.
Now, while you may not have the space or the budget to recreate a feature like this in your own garden, how about this as an alternative? It's packed with detail and interest. It's wonderful. What was pretty much a mediocre, underperforming thoroughfare has now become a real feature of these gardens. It's testament to the horticultural nous of Paul and the team being willing to think outside the box. And, of course, the old adage, right plant, right place.
I think it's a fantastic addition to Roma Street. It really shows the public what you can do with succulents in a subtropical climate, but a garden is never finished. So there's always things we will look to change and to evolve as we work through the garden's life cycle.
What's a good Australian native alternative to gazanias? Well, I've got the answer. Gazanias, of course, are very colourful. They like the dry, but the thing is that they're thugs. They take over completely, and any little tiny native plants that's trying to appear from the soil, they just will not let it happen because they'll just completely carpet over them. Well, the answer might be in this ever-reliable Australian plant. It's commonly called pig face or carpa brotus, and it's a good one because it's a succulent, and you know how hardy succulents are. They love the sun, they don't need a lot of water once they're established. Have a look at this. Pick the leaf off and just go like that, and you'll see how fleshy it is inside. It's a giveaway that it's a good succulent plant. It has bright pink flowers, and it flowers for a long time. A good spreading plant to act as a good ground cover, a beaut alternative to a thug.
Can I plant seed from the spice aisle? Well, many of our common spices are actually derived from seed. Things like coriander seed, celery seed, peppercorns, and cardamom. And whilst they're often used in powder form in the kitchen, you can buy them in seed form. Now, if you like growing things from seed, you may have wondered, what happens if I sow these? Well, they may well germinate, but it's not recommended to do so. A lot of these seeds are actually imported, and they're intended for eating, not for growing. So you might end up introducing a pest or disease into the growing environment. Now, certified gardening seed only costs a couple of dollars per pack, and it's the safest way to make sure you get a reliable crop in your garden, and then put the spices to use in the kitchen.
What are the best chilies to grow for a cool, temperate climate? Chilies are some of the most generous plants you can grow because just a handful of fruit can spice up your meals for many months. Most culinary chilies are cultivars of Capsicum annum, which can be short-lived perennials in warmer climates, but in a cool climate, they are true annuals and need to be sown every year in late winter with seedlings planted in spring. I have the perennial tree chili, or ricotto, Capsicum pubescens, which produces large fruit that are spicy and juicy. They're great to pickle whole or blended, salted and fermented into a cracking hot sauce.
A lot of you might have noticed that I'm not always a particular gardener. I like things to do what they will, plants to be a little bit free. But when it comes to growing seeds, I really love a straight line. I find it much easier to keep track of what has germinated and, of course, thin them as they establish. And I've got a really simple trick for ensuring that your seeds go in straight. I absolutely love a metal rake. There's so many things you can do with it. You can level a bed, of course, rake things up. But it also makes a great little tool for adjusting to be a seed spacer. Now, I've got some pipe here that I got from the irrigation specialist. It's just offcuts, and it slips perfectly over the tines of the rake. They're totally adjustable so that I can put them at different intervals. So I want to sow some carrots. I want them to be about 10 centimetres apart, each of the rows, so I can just choose to put them on every third or fourth tine, and then I get fantastically even spaced rows for my seeds. It's a simple little trick for keeping your rows of seeds super straight. How good's that?
Today, I'm making a simple pond that we could all have a go at in a small space. But this site here is particularly special because here at Rose Bay Public School in Sydney, there's been a pond here for more than 20 years. And today, with some of the students, we're going to breathe some new life in it so that it can look forward to the next 20 years ahead. The old pond had disappeared under a forest of overgrowth, so I've cleared the site and saved some of the more valuable water plants. The safe recommended depth for a pond like this is 30 centimetres deep, and I've lined it with a waterproof rubber membrane available at nurseries and suppliers.
Hey, Costa. Hi, Costa.
Hey, fantastic. How are you going?
Good, thanks.
With the help of Lily, Max, Sam and Caitlin, we're going to create a new pond that the next generation of students will be able to care for. The liner. So if you can start to grab some of the rocks from here and bring them in and put a bigger one on the bottom. Yeah, that's it.
I actually had no idea there was a pond. Me and my friend Neo, who left the school, always imagined that there could be a pond here, but we never actually realised that there was one.
Because all the grass and all
Yeah.
the rushes had filled it up.
Mm.
What are you thinking about what we're doing here in a new pond?
Oh, yeah, I'm really excited. I think it'll be a great opportunity for the kindies and year ones and actually everyone in the school to learn about all the little creatures that will be in here.
What do you think about what we're going to do?
I'm actually quite excited. I feel like it'll be really cool to have lots of new life in our schools. It's kind of more happier.
Hey, Max, are you a gardener?
Yeah, I like how you're making like your own life from your fingertips. You're planting seeds which you water and then it grows up, like the pond here, planting stuff, and then it'll make life for animals and, yeah.
I'm really happy with this. It's going to look amazing with the water in it. Now that all of your stonework is complete, we're going to move over there and start to plant all of the habitat plantings. I'll get the hose, this will start to fill, and let's head up there. All right. Take up a position. You can see the plants are set out here. Now, the best part about this is these are all local plant species that would have been here hundreds of years ago. So what we're doing is bringing them back, and the local wildlife are going to love it. So, Sam, you've got a plant called prickly Moses. That's a wattle, and it's great for the little birds because they can run around in there and they're safe from any predators. Max, you've got the long-haired plume grass, and that grass spreads out and it grows those long seed heads, and the insects love it. Lily, have a look at yours. What does that look like?
Barbed wire.
Exactly, it's called the barbed wire grass. And then this one here, Caitlin, that's called the hairy hakea. That'll fill up here, the birds will come in here, the little birds will love it, and this will all become a real habitat for all the wildlife. Now, I reckon we've been here long enough for the pond to have filled up, which means we can go over there and put some pond plants in. Let's go, eh? Now we're down to the real fun part. All the hard work with the pond liner and the rock work is done. So this little section of the pond is actually what we call the bog zone, or the wet soil zone. And plants that like to have wet feet enjoy this part. So I've separated it from the rest of the pond, and that'll mean this will fill up with those plants, but they won't take over the entire area. And the first thing that we might start with there, Caitlin, that's called the knobby club rush. And Max, that one there is called a juncus, and they will fill this area up. So I'm going to put that one in like so, and if I leave it in the pot for now, over time, it will climb out and start to spread, and we can control it a little bit. And I'm going to put the juncus over here. Now, the last thing we're going to put in is some of the original rushes and grasses. Look at that. This is recycling. Look at that. So these plants here will fill this up, so when the frogs want to be in water, they can come here and be protected by all these rushes that'll grow up really tall and thick. Now we've got some different plants to put into this part of the pond. This here is milfoil. So, Lily, grab a piece of the milfoil with roots on it. Yeah, that's a good piece. So hold that there, and what I'll do is I'll just push that into a gap where the rocks are, and then just let it fall in, and that will just grow from there. So we can put a few bits of the milfoil into the stones, but we can also release a little bit to just find a place of its own. So, yeah, just let them go anywhere in there. That's it. So this one here is calicasia, and it has this beautiful big leaf and is such a wonderful feature. So it's already in a container of its own, and I thought it would look nice if it goes right in that corner. What do you think?
Yeah, that does look nice. It's perfectly underwater.
What do you know about biodiversity and the way that the pond works?
I don't really understand how the frogs get here, but I understand how the life cycle works. So, like, all the eggs that happen in there, and then they hatch, and the tadpoles, and then those tadpoles turn into frogs. They have more eggs, and the cycle keeps going.
Have a look at this. This morning, there was just a pond liner and some rocks that you've helped shape, and you've been part of something that's prepared the pond for its next journey. And you're going to hand this on to all the students that are going to follow you and all of the insects and animals that are going to be attracted to this pond that you've got a fingerprint on.
I've enjoyed watching the process of building the rocks. It reminds me of Tetris, and I love just seeing how things fit together.
It started as a tarp, and now we've made like a whole habitat and home for many animals to come.
Caitlin, what are you going to tell your friends about what you've been up to today?
Well, I can tell them a lot about how we've made new homes for many different insects and animals, and we've added on to a whole new journey.
Did you do anything like this when you went to school? And where did you actually go to school?
Well, I didn't build anything like this when I was at school, but I really loved the chance to be able to do it for school children now. And I actually went to this school. This was my primary school. So the playground and this whole place has a lot of memories for me, and to be able to come back and still be a part of it means the world.
I love to see plants growing in unusual spots, and this one is doing so well. It's in a very busy area, one of the busiest roads in Melbourne, lots of traffic going by and lots of people going by, but I wonder how often they stop and smell this beautiful plant. It's called Acocynthera oblongifolia, or the bushman's poison. It tells you that the whole plant is poisonous. However, I used to have one of these in Mildura, and it grew beside my bedroom, and at night it just wafted up this beautiful perfume because all of those wonderful flowers, they smell heavier than jasmine, absolutely gorgeous. Big clusters of white flowers, followed by black berries. They look a bit like an olive. Don't, for heaven's sake, eat them. The leaves are a little bit like a bay laurel. They're tough and leathery. The whole plant grows about 6 to 10 metres. It should and it will grow in sunny spot, and it really likes even the heat of Mildura. So if you've got a tough spot, that'd be a great thing to grow.
Are you running out of floor space in your garden? Well, Sophie's been hanging out to show us her latest project. And I know it's one you'll want to have a go at this weekend.
They go in and out of fashion, but I've always loved hanging baskets. Today, I'm at one of my local nurseries to look at a few combinations. Growing a hanging garden is a great way of literally taking your plants to another level so that you've got greenery and colour at your eye line. But hanging mid-air can make for challenging conditions, including being prone to drying out quickly. So I'm going to give you all the tips you need to keep hanging baskets happy and plant 2 different styles of hanging basket to give you some inspiration. First, let's talk about the material of your basket. There are 2 main factors that come into play with hanging pots. The first is the availability of water, and the second is weight. I'm going to plant shade lovers into this 30-centimetre plastic pot. It's self-watering, lightweight, and just large enough to fit multiple plants. I'm also going to plant this classic Koya basket with sun lovers. A lot of people would have old baskets like this at home, so later I'm going to show some easy ways to give them new life. When choosing plants for hanging baskets, think about what your watering regime is going to be. Are you really going to remember to water it every day? If not, colourful annuals are probably not for you unless you choose a self-watering pot. It'll be less work if you choose plants that will bounce back after drying out and are well suited to the level of sun they're going to get. For the shady basket, I've chosen Plectranthus mona lavender, a campanula, bacopa and lamium. And for the sun lover basket, I've chosen a couple of geraniums, Lotus australis, Carcalla or Dysphyma, variegated society garlic, and Dichondra silver falls. Of course, you could choose just one plant, but if you want more colour and interest, combine multiple plants. They're going to grow up and hang over the edge to create a floating garden. I'm using Plectranthus mona lavender for height and bacopa, lamium and campanula to spill over the edges and hide the plastic pot. I'm using a premium potting media as it will already be complete with wetting agent and slow-release fertiliser. With the shady pot complete, it's time to prepare the next basket for the sun lovers. Coir baskets have their pros and cons. From an aesthetic point of view, they look better than plastic and they blend beautifully into the garden. However, birds love to collect the fibres to make their nests. They also dry out really quickly. So here, I've lined the basket with some plastic. It's simply the bag that had the potting media in it, and I'm going to cut some holes in the bottom to make sure I've got good drainage. I'm going to do about 10 like that. Because I'm planting sun lovers in this pot and it's not a self-watering pot, I'm going to improve the water holding capacity of the soil by adding coir peat. I've added about 1 part coir to 2 parts potting media, and that will just help to retain extra moisture in the soil. This bushy geranium is Geranium Oso Orange, and it will give the pot height and a splash of bold colour. I'm adding variegated society garlic, which has edible leaves and a bit of vertical accent to its foliage and slender spikes of flowers. Around the edge, I'm adding 4 ground covers: Lotus australis with its incredible bright orange-red flowers, Dichondra silver falls, a white ivy leaf geranium, and Carcalla, an edible Australian native succulent. Because I've got a lot of plants in these hanging baskets and they're going to get watered often, nutrients are either used up or quickly flushed out and need to be replaced. So be sure to feed them regularly with liquid fertiliser. Pots this big can get quite heavy, particularly when they're wet, so make sure the structure from which they're hanging can support their weight. Also, with pots that are sun lovers like this, make sure that they sit out from under the eaves. You can use a bracket so that they sit proud. That way, not only will they get enough sun to be happy, but they'll also take advantage of any rains that come. Now, these 2 pots are coming home with me to my place, where the ground covers are going to spill over the edge and make them look gorgeous. If you've squeezed multiple plants into a pot like I have, make sure you keep it under control with some pruning and division, as well as rotate it every few weeks to get even growth.
Still to come on Gardening Australia, Clarence looks at how the rainforest in Sydney is being protected. Tammy gets a bit snaky.
Snake plants are perfect for all of us seeking low-maintenance indoor greenery. And I'll be sharing some of my favourites.
And we meet a garden designer who just loves to turn on the colour. Botanic gardens do so many things for us. They're a great place to have a walk. They're a green hub for our biodiversity. You might see some wildlife as you wander around, and they're a great place to spot some unique plants. They can also be important resources for science. Now, Clarence is checking out a project in Sydney that's ensuring the precious threatened rainforest species in their collection are being protected for generations to come.
You may not know the name Waggamagully yet. Here we are, in a nice spot too. You probably know it better is Sydney's Royal Botanic Garden. The garden was the first scientific institution in Australia and still has researchers doing cutting-edge work. In fact, I'm supposed to be meeting one of them today. Dr. Karen Somerville runs the Rainforest Seed Conservation Project. Oh, Karen, I found you.
Lawrence, hello.
Hey, good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise.
It's been ages.
No, how are you?
I'm well. Are you still seed collecting, I see?
I am, yeah. Working on this one today. This beautiful fruit. This is cordyline rubra. Nice rainforest plant that a lot of people have in their gardens.
When you're out collecting, what are we looking for in particular in the fruit and the seed?
Well, you want to look for the fruit that has the best colour.
What's the best one, do you think?
Go for the darker coloured ones. You want to go for the ones that are as ripe as possible, and that means that the seed inside will be nice and mature.
Well, this would really stand out in the rainforest.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And then with the seeds themselves, you want to test a few before you collect too many to make sure that they've actually got an embryo inside. Oops.
So we're going to have to cut this open to see what's in there. You've done this before.
Ah, I have. So that one's perfect. That one's got a nice little white embryo in there that you can see pretty clearly. And that one does too. So that looks like it's going to be a good collection. I'll just put in a tag.
Yep. Tag. All the data of where and when and...
Yeah, that's right. It's really important to record all the information about where you found the plant and what's growing around it. And we take GPS coordinates so that, you know, if somebody else wants to find it down the track, they can. And that's what we need for the seed bank.
I'm free for the day. Would you like some help collecting some more specimens?
Absolutely.
Well, if you lead the way, I'll bring our gear and...
OK, great.
Away we go.
All right.
Evolution of Australian rainforests from Gondwana to today, it's a remarkable change when you think about it. What do we look at these days?
Yeah, well, 50 million years ago, most of Australia was covered in rainforest, which, you know, it's hard to believe these days.
Yeah.
The continent broke away from Gondwana land and shifted north and started to dry out. So the rainforest was restricted to the higher rainfall areas. And then when the Europeans arrived, especially the late 1800s to early 1900s, there was a lot of clearing of rainforest for timber and for agriculture. And so what we have left now is less than 0.5% of the landmass. Still contains a huge amount of diversity, so more than 3,500 different seed-bearing species, and then hundreds of ferns and mosses and liverworts.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a good one. This is one we haven't actually collected before.
What are we looking at here?
This is Delinia alata.
Gorgeous looking flower.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Actually, that's the fruit.
That's the fruit?
And that's the perfect time to collect it when it's really open like that. You know that the seed's likely to be at its most mature. Let's collect some.
All right. It's an amazing structure. Look at that pod.
Yeah, gorgeous. And the seed has actually got a big white arrow around it, so that's the actual seed.
And this is the reward for anything that wants to come along and eat it, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
Plants are so clever.
Yeah. We'll germinate some of the seeds while they're fresh, and then we'll dry some out, see how they go germinating after they've dried, and then if they survive that, then we'll try putting them into storage in the freezer and see if they germinate after that as well.
Yeah. Can I take it it's not always this easy when you're doing rainforest collection?
Yeah, especially because most of the flowering and the fruiting is really up high in the canopy, very, very hard to get to. So sometimes we'll use one of those big, long collecting poles, the extendable pole with the pruners on the end. Sometimes we can use a slingshot to try and knock them down. We've actually had somebody dangling out of a helicopter to collect seeds from the Woolamai pines. One thing I'd like to try next is an attachment you can get for a drone, so you can just fly straight over the canopy, look down and see what's fruiting, and then you collect it with this pruner that dangles from the drone.
Oh, yeah, it just keeps moving forward, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So we'll get some more seed?
Yeah.
All right. Here we are, the rainforest plum. Fantastic looking fruit, look at that.
Aren't they beautiful?
You just
So
can't get
big.
past it. Look at them.
This is actually what's called a pyrene. So it's got a sort of a leathery outer covering, and then the seed is on the inside. So if we just cut it open, so it only has a thin seed coat. And this type of seed is one that's really hard to store because we have to be able to dry it down to a really low moisture content and then package it up and put it in the freezer. And the drying, it stops the water from forming ice crystals when we freeze it.
Because I imagine with a lot of the rainforest species, given their habit and, you know, landing on the forest floor, by their very nature, want to stay moist.
Yeah, I mean, they're naturally geared up to germinate. We can preserve the species in other ways. So we can either grow them in a potted collection in the nursery, or we can grow them in collections in a botanic garden. One thing we do with the threatened species is that we put them into tissue culture. So we get them into a glass jar, and we grow them on agar that has all the nutrients that they need to germinate.
It's a sobering thought that rainforests are so threatened in Australia that we're reduced to growing a magnificent plant like the Davidson plum in a jar. Now, all the more reason to get collecting. So I'll collect some fruit, I'll eat the fruit, and I'll bring these seeds back.
Okay,
deal. All right. The clear and present danger to Aussie native rainforests is starkly represented by one species in particular.
This is one of the most threatened species in Australian rainforests at the moment. This is the native guava, or Rhodomyrtus sidioides. This species was really common in rainforests, and then 2010, when myrtle rust hit, it was just hit so badly that it's now critically endangered.
There are no specimens of this particular species in the gardens?
No, we did have one, but it was so badly affected by myrtle rust that it was cut out. So the only specimen that we have at the moment is a painting that's in the gallery.
Far out.
Yeah.
Myrtle rust is a nasty fungal disease that afflicts more than 400 native Australian plant species, particularly the guava. And this is it.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is the native guava, and this is what it looks like when it's in flower. It's absolutely beautiful. Actually smells delicious when it's flowering.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you for the day. You too. Take care. All right. It's confronting that this is as close as I'll get today to this stunning rainforest plant. Karen and many others are putting huge efforts into conserving the species, as well as stamping out myrtle rust and returning our rainforest to better conditions. But we could all do more. We're really just getting to know our Australian rainforest species. Their value and beauty is outstanding, and many make great additions to our gardens. We overlook them at our peril. Now, the future of Australian rainforests hangs in the balance, and it's up to each and every one of us to do what we can to ensure their survival.
It's not just clothes that go in and out of fashion. Plants do too. Tammy's here to profile a classic that's back on centre stage.
Snake plants, also known as Sansevieria, are a group of plants that have really stood the test of time. They've been popular indoor plants for decades, cherished for their easy care and air purifying qualities. They're one of the top plants for absorbing VOCs, that's volatile organic compounds, from inside your home, and have recently been included in the genus Dracaena, based on the molecular phylogenetic studies. The weedy version, popular in the 70s and still around, grew so easily and escaped from gardens to become an environmental weed, especially in some parts of Queensland. To combat weediness, it's best to choose smaller and newer varieties and confine them in a pot indoors. Snake plants thrive in bright indirect light, but can tolerate low light conditions, and they are not thirsty plants. Overwatering can lead to root rot and a blackening of the leaf edge. They prefer to dry out in between waterings and use a well-draining succulent mix to prevent waterlogging. Prune any dead or yellowing leaves to maintain the plant's appeal. Snake plants are pretty much pest resistant, but inspect every now and then for signs of infestation of any sap-sucking insects. This one's called Moonshine, and I love it because it's so different from the traditional forms, with its pale silvery green leaves. It's slow growing and eventually will get up to about 1 metre tall. This one's a firm favourite. It's called Whalefin, and you can see it's got broad paddle-like leaves. You can find ones that are variegated or also just green. It's such a cutie. This elegant form is called Bantal Sensation. It has these long sword-like leaves with fine minty stripes. A great addition to your home collection. Snake plants are perfect for all of us seeking low-maintenance indoor greenery. And who doesn't love a plant that'll help clean the air? If only you'd clean my bathroom too.
Just because they're native species, it doesn't mean they should be left to their own devices. Native shrubs respond well to pruning. This Coria snowbell is getting a bit lanky and needs a good cutback to keep it in shape. And I'm keeping these Westringia smokies nice and compact by giving them a trim. Pruning's also a great opportunity to propagate. I'm choosing medium wood, not too hard, not too soft. Just cutting some small pieces, stripping the lower leaves off. And then I'm going to just dip the bottom of the stem into some rooting hormone and then slip it into some seed raising mix. Just like that. 4 to 6 weeks in a partly shaded, sheltered spot, and I'll have a tray of newbies ready for potting on. The Westringias are tip cuttings and will strike and establish in a similar time frame. Pruning with some bonus cuttings. It's always a win when you get 2 results from 1 job.
Don't you just love that from a little packet of seeds like this, you can grow an absolute riot of colour in the garden? Well, our next story is with someone who's on the same page, a horticulturist and designer who's all about the flowers.
I love plants. I love how they shift and change through the season. I love how, as gardeners, we don't have complete control over them, and that you can discover these little moments of complexity, these little moments of wonder, and just how you can create art or big sweeps of colour through the use of plants as well. I'm Jack Semler. I'm a plant practitioner, so I'm a horticulturalist, but I also do other things with plants that involve design and the arts in public spaces and in private homes. And I also support other allied professionals like landscape architects to do their work. This is my home garden. It's called Heartland, and we're in the Bayside suburbs of Melbourne in Frankston. I feel like it just fuels my creativity having all of these plants around me, and that it really drives research and development when I think about my planting design. It's about naturalism, but in an Australian context. I want to feel like the gardens belong in a dry summer climate where I live in Victoria, but I really want to have wonder and beauty through the plants throughout the year, and so a high diversity of plants. I refer to it as being a maximalist, where we're about as many plants as possible across the seasons. I start by creating a short list of plants. I always find it useful to start thinking about what those hero plants might be in a design, So the ones that I want to see a lot of, the ones that are super resilient, that will flower for a long time. So I'm always starting off with those kind of key plants, and then I'm building and I'm thinking about how that would roll year round. This is in my backyard. I call it a dry dynamic planting because it's resilient for our dry summer climate in Victoria, but it's dynamic in the way that bulbs will come and go throughout the seasons. Different herbaceous perennials will come and go as well. So it constantly shifts and changes throughout the year. It's resilient, but I want it to be beautiful as well and for it to have a particular atmosphere. And I love the seed heads of the grasses and how they create this really gauzy effect in the garden, a softness. And also, as well as having a tapestry of foliage at the ground level, I want to have a floating layer of flowers so that you see all the delight, the complexity and the diversity of the plants. This is an incredible Calendrinia grandiflora. It's got this amazing silver succulent base, and then these incredible flowers, like these long flower stems with these sea of violet purple flowers, and I just think it's like plant crack. It's so incredible, the colour and the way the flowers kind of float above the succulent base. This is an Australian pelargonium, Pelargonium rodnianum. We use it as one of the base plants in this garden to cover the ground, but I love the charming little pink flowers. When I look at my work and I look at this garden that I've created, I just feel an understanding of the power of plants, that you can just transform spaces, places. You can transform your life through plants. I was very lucky. I grew up on a farm. And I come from generations of plants women. So my aunts, all my family, my grandmas, they were all very passionate gardeners, and they created these incredible gardens in very harsh environments that were really dry and arid. And they were so abundant and generous, and they were filled with all this kind of colour and sweeps of succulents and unusual plant combinations. It really taught me that gardens, you know, they are sustenance around our homes, but they're also places for creativity too. My dad worked for the primary industries, and so I would go and collect seeds with him on the weekend. And, you know, just as I grew up, it just felt like it was always plants around us and that gardening was just a way of life. When I was growing up, I did well at school, but it never seemed to be an option to be a gardener or to do anything related, like be a landscape architect. And so I ended up studying outdoor education because I love the natural world. And then during that time, I actually worked for an amazing nursery, and I worked with this incredible fount of knowledge in Australian native plants, Marilyn Sprague. And I worked for her for many years, and I just felt like I absorbed such a passion for plants and for growing plants as well, for, again, collecting seeds, but also the propagating of them enjoying them flower, you know, all the subtleties of Goldfields plants. But after a while, I found myself in Alice Springs and worked there with science and technology, an Indigenous company up there. But I think plants were always calling to me. So when I moved with my partner back down south, I was in South Australia and I just threw in my job and I started studying horticulture full time. And from that point, I haven't looked back. Like I think plants gets you in the end, and it took a while for me to be able to pursue it as a vocation, but now I'm not looking back. We're in this incredible McClellan Gallery and Sculpture Park. It's in a bushland setting. It's about a 10-minute drive away from where I live. And it's such a natural kind of partnership to come to McClellan as a plant practitioner and actually grow a sculptural piece, actually grow an artwork. There are so many parallels between the practice of gardening and the practice of art or art practices. And it's the perfect place to kind of explore what those parallels are and pilot work as well. This piece, Work Tended, it's exploring the dynamic ways that we create art and how it's influenced by the cycles and the seasons of nature. It's a work that's been buffeted by the seasons, by storms, by dry, and it's also how we've looked at how we actually create and use plants as a canvas, that we can look at the repetition, the use of colour, and how we actually have these dynamic artworks in our gardens, but also in sculptural spaces. Through 3 seed mixes, I've sown more than 20 species in this work. Some of them have succeeded, some of them haven't liked the wet summer, but that's all part of piloting work and exploring what works in this situation. I am a massive fan of paper daisies and other tactile flowers for public space design and for artworks as well. It's about actually touching the work. And so to have this effect, we've used a huge range of these iconic paper daisies or everlasting daisies. Some of my favourites like Xerochrysum bracticum, which has this incredible kind of colour palette throughout the whole work. There are Rhodanthe chlorocephalus, which are those incredible paper daisies. There's other things that have kind of come and gone throughout the seasons. And to consider that palette so that it's readable in this space, we have a whole lot of salmon zinnia lilliput, you know, floating through the space that, you know, respond to the Xerochrysum paper daisies as well. I can't actually envisage a life that I don't have plants in it. There has always been an element of nature, of plants, like it's where I'm at home.
I hope that recharged your inspiration battery as much as it did mine. Now, I'm really happy to let you know that Jack is going to be our next guest presenter. And over the coming weeks, she's going to show us how to create a garden as stunning as hers without spending a fortune. It's going to be a great series. It's that time. You guessed it. Jobs for the weekend. Here they come.
In cool temperate gardens, find a sunny spot and sow seeds of Japanese turnip into shallow trenches. These fast-growing brassicas develop delicious, crisp, sweet globes, and the foliage can also be stir-fried or steamed. If you love a cuppa in the garden, why not grow your own? Chamomile, lemon verbena, mint varieties, and even rosemary make great herbal teas and can be planted now. If your citrus have been impacted by gall wasp, it's your last chance to shave or remove galls before the larvae hatch and reinfest. Always bag and solarise infected prunings before disposal. In warm temperate gardens, treat flowering faves like azaleas, rhododendrons and daphnes to top dressing of aged sheep or cow manure, covered by a luscious layer of mulch. Now that spring has sprung, show your indoor plants some love. Refresh tired potting mix, repot pot-bound beauties, and treat all plants to some seaweed tonic, the perfect pick-me-up after a long, cold winter. Spring bulbs which have finished flowering are now developing next year's flowers, so a light dusting of blood and bone will provide extra nutrients for next season's stunning spring show. In the subtropics, it's time to top up mulch on garden beds to help retain moisture, regulate soil temperature and minimise competition from weeds. Choose local sustainable products where possible. Speaking of weeds, they're growing at a rate of knots at the moment, so pull them out when you see them and bin them before they flower and flourish. As they say, 1 year's seeds, 7 years weed. Start fortnightly foliar feeding roses using liquid seaweed. Apply half a handful of chook manure around established plants once every 6 weeks until autumn. Tropical gardeners, for a fruit with a difference, you can't go past the kiwi berry, Actinidia arguta. Bunches of hairless, grape-sized fruits with the flavour of kiwi fruits born on a vigorous vine. Pop in a couple today. grow your own super snack of edamame, a large seeded soybean eaten steamed and salted. Sow seeds direct in full sun. They'll be ready to harvest in a couple of months. Head to the worm farm and clear out some vermicompost. Pile the castings in the top tray into a cone shape. Wait 10 minutes until the worms have wriggled deeper and remove the castings. For a splash of summer colour in the arid garden, sow a seed or two of Sturt's Desert Rose, the floral emblem of the Northern Territory. This small shrub bears showy mauve flowers and loves a tough, sunny spot. If you've been harvesting asparagus, it's a great time to give your plants a good feed with some chicken manure and allow the plants to recover before harvesting again in summer. Eucalypts aren't just for large spaces. Many of these iconic Aussies are great in pots, particularly the mallee varieties, including the gorgeous rose mallee, Eucalyptus rhodantha. What a brilliant time of the year to be out and about getting your hands dirty. Make sure you let us know what you've been up to on our Gardening Australia social pages. Well, I think we've well and truly hit this week's show clean out of the park, but we've got plenty of colour and blossoms for you next time. Here's what's in store.
I'm finding out about Tasmania's native orchids, which are some of the most beautiful and threatened of plants. There are also some great tips about photographing them safely and responsibly.
I'm going to show you how to grow your own curry spices. They're guaranteed to make your taste buds sing.
And we meet a bachelor and gubby man strengthening the ties between plants and culture.
It means the world to me to know that my ancestors have been coming here for thousands and thousands of years, and I'm following their footsteps on this beautiful country.